My internet went out. So let me, I guess I have to connect again. Hold on. This must have been really important, Inez. Internet went out. But anyway, reward is, the Greek word is mythos, and it means dues paid for work, wages higher, reward used for fruits, naturally resulting from toils and endeavors, and in both senses, rewards and punishment of the reward which God bestows or will bestow upon good deeds and endeavors of punishment. So the Strong's definition talks about pay for services, literally or figuratively, good or bad, higher reward, wages. So we're talking about loving your enemies, and this is part 2. We're talking about the rewards. We're talking about the rewards, and we're talking about what happens if we don't. You know, when we talked about this one here, we understand that verse 46 said we're going to get a reward. So now we're talking about what a reward is, and we said you have to be mature to do that, to love your enemies the way that we're talking about here, and getting a reward. So now, what reward would you get? Okay, Inez, you know, do you think that we're working for the Lord when we love our enemies? You know, just understanding that you're going to get something good or bad for loving or not loving them. If we love them, we're going to get a reward. So what kind of rewards does God give? And what does the scripture say about these rewards? What do they look like? So we're going to talk about that for a minute. But had you thought about, Inez, that you're going to get a reward for loving people that hate you? Had you thought about that? I can't hear you. You're on mute. You still on mute? No, I still can't hear you. Okay. Well, you're not on mute. I don't know why I can't hear you. Can you hear me, Inez? Okay, I can't hear you. Something's happening on your end. But anyway, if you get it working, I'll let you know. Okay, so I hadn't thought about getting a reward. So let's look at what those rewards look like. What do those rewards look like? I can hear something knocking on this, but I don't know what it is. In James 1:12, it says, let me make sure that I'm in the right place here. Yes. In James 1:12, and the English Standard Version, it says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. And in Colossians 3:23 and 24, it talks about whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord, and not for men, knowing that the Lord will receive the inheritance, that you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ. So we talk about that a lot when we're at work or when we're in organizations and when we're at church, whatever we're doing, do it as unto the Lord and not as unto people and not as unto men. And he says he has an inheritance for you. So we know that if you're working, especially if you're working in church and you're working as unto the Lord under a particular anointing, that anointing is going to fall on you. You'll be able to do that. You'll be able to do the things that the leader is doing that you're helping. And it's important that we understand that reward is coming. Inez, did you say something again? I almost heard you that time. I heard one word. So keep talking. You almost got it. So in Matthew 16:27, for the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. And then he will repay each person according to what he has done. So we know that we are going to get a reward according to what we have done. And then in Matthew 21:25, it says, his master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, I will set you over much, even unto the joy of your master. So we know that rewards are out there. They're not hidden from us. We know that the Lord is giving us examples of the rewards that people are getting. And one of them was a crown of life. So let's see what that is. A crown, that's one of the rewards, that we talked about. That is Stephanos, a crown, a mark of royal, and general exalted rank. The wreath or garland, which is given as a prize to victors in public games. The eternal blessedness, which will be given as a prize to the genuine service of God and Christ. The crown wreath, which is the reward of righteousness, that which is an ornament and honor to one. So that strong definition also says that, it is a badge of royalty, a prize in public games, a symbol of honor generally, but more conspicuously, an elaborate than the simple, literally and figuratively, a crown. So it must have some great significance to have a crown. That is a reward. That is one of the rewards that's talked about. So let's go on to some more scriptures here. In Psalms 37, verse 4, it says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. So one of the rewards is the desires of your heart. 1 Peter 5:4 says, when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfolding crown of glory. All right, we already looked at crown. We're going to look at glory in a few minutes when we finish this list here. And 2 Corinthians 5:10 talks about, for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done in his body, whether good or evil. So we're all going to get a reward from Christ when we come to the judgment seat. And we're going to get a reward because of what we've done in our body, whether good or evil. Are you saying something, Inez? Yep, I still can't hear you. It sounds like I'm hearing a bit of a word. And then Revelation 22:12 says, behold, I'm coming soon, bringing my recompense with me to repay each one for what he has done. So we get a reward for whatever we do. We're going to get a reward. So now let's talk about the Greek for glory. There's a long definition for that, a crown of glory. So we want to examine that so we can know and understand what that means as we go further through this information. The Greek for glory is doxa. I know that most folks who have studied have heard of doxa. You know, it's an opinion, a judgment, whether good or bad. You know, in the New Testament, it's always good opinion concerning praise and honor, glory, splendor, brightness of the moon, sun, and stars, magnificent excellence, preeminence, dignity, grace, majesty. A thing belonging to God, a king in majesty which belongs to him as a supreme ruler, majesty in the sense of absolute perfection of the deity. A thing belonging to Christ, a kingly majesty of the Messiah, an absolutely perfect inward and personal excellency of Christ, the majesty. Of the angels, an apparent in their exterior brightness, a most glorious condition, most exalted state of that condition which God the Father in heaven, through which Christ was raised after he achieved his work on earth. The glorious condition of blessedness into which is appointed and promised that true Christians shall enter after their Savior returns from heaven. Okay, Inez, can you talk yet? I can hear you, but it's very low. So you have to turn the volume up, Inez. Okay. So let's go to what we're really trying to get to on tonight. This is what we're going to spend most of our time on, the examples of people that love their enemies that God rewarded. And the two examples that we picked were Daniel and Joseph. Did you try again, Inez? Are you able? I can hear you, but you're very low, very low. So you seem to be quite a ways from the microphone. Yeah, I can't make out what you're saying, but I can hear you talking. I couldn't hear you talking before, but I can hear you talking now. But anyway, we had Daniel and Joseph. Obviously, we can only talk about one of these in an hour. So we're going to pick Joseph to talk about, but we're going to mention Daniel because Daniel was hated by his co-workers. And so it's easy enough to love people that you know, they're not your family members. And not only was he hated by his co-workers, you know, they wanted to get him killed. But he loved them and he did nothing to protect himself from them. He did nothing to avenge himself on what they were doing. He did nothing to hurt them. And so God rewarded Daniel through several different kings. Daniel received wealth, he received honor, he received position, he was put over everybody. What they intended to do to Daniel was done to them. So that's a very, I know that most folks have read that story of Daniel, but that's a very interesting thing to take note of, that he loved them. And no matter what they did, he did nothing to hurt them, not one thing. And so we're gonna go over now and talk about Joseph. And because Joseph's biological brothers hated him, you know, Daniel's co-workers hated him, but he loved them. Joseph's brothers hated him, yet he loved them. Both groups were enemies, but they were loved. We will discuss Joseph in more detail. That's what we're getting ready to do right now. And Joseph's biological brothers, this came from the Amplified Bible, chapter 37 of the Amplified Bible. Joseph's brothers hated him because he had not done anything to them, just because their father loved him. This was the first reason they hated him. And they were his first enemies. You know, at what point did Joseph start to trust the Lord instead of the family? Well, have you ever had a family or some family member to dislike you for whatever reason? They cannot celebrate you. They do not love you. They will not be fair to you, are not willing to treat you as they would treat other family members. Does that ever happen? Inez, I know you're still trying to make that work. Try again.
Yeah.
I hear you now.
Oh, you can? Okay.
Got it working. Okay, you got it working. So, you ready for this question? You know, have you ever had some family member to dislike you for whatever reason? They couldn't celebrate you, they do not love you, they will not be fair to you, and they're not willing to treat you like other family members. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, I've had that happen, yes.
Mm-hmm. And so it's really hurtful when people do that. And it don't even appear that they have a reason for doing it. But you still have to love them. And this is what happened to Joseph. This is what happened to Joseph. And I have to tell you, when that happened to me, I was not loving them like Joseph did. So let me just say that right up front. I wasn't. I hadn't learned how to love them agape. I hadn't learned that yet. And so I wasn't even thinking about it. So Joseph did not know why his brothers hated him enough to want him dead, you know, but that must have been very traumatic for him because his brothers refused to speak peaceably to him, yet he loved them. Can you imagine what Joseph must have been going through in his mind? You know, he didn't ask to be born. Uh, he didn't ask for his father's love. He didn't ask God to give him his dreams. Have you ever heard anybody say, I didn't ask to be born?
I've heard people say that.
Me too.
I've heard that.
Yeah, yeah. And that meant that they were going through something, that meant that they were having some trouble, you know, and they were saying, I didn't ask to be born. Joseph knew that they hated him because of what he was to other people. Yet he took a position of love. He never said anything to his father about their unpleasant attitude toward him. He never started an argument with them.
No, he didn't.
Never complained to them about being angry with him. Isn't that amazing, Inez?
It's amazing.
It is, you know, he never did any of that. And he is a perfect example, you know, and we can see where he must have spent a lot of time with the Lord. He must have, because he was just being totally protected and he was making some good decisions about them. He told them of the dream and he probably thought they would be happy for him and wanted them to celebrate with him because God was giving him dreams, but he still loved them. He never told them that he loved them, but his actions said it all. You know, he was patient with them. He suffered long with them. He took no account of wrong that was done him. He was not fretful or resentful of them. He paid no attention to what was done to him at their hands. He did not do any evil or pay them back for what they did. Wow. When you think about that, that's a lot. Especially if you're dealing with family that you love, you know. You love them and they don't love you. That's pretty challenging situation. But
It is.
Joseph got rewarded for that. So let's see now. Treating him poorly at some point was not enough for them. They decided to kill him. And the only reason they didn't kill him was because Reuben stopped him.
Yes.
Yeah, and so guess what? Who was in the middle of all of that? Judah. Judah was in the middle of all of that, and he was the one. So Jesus was going to come through his bloodline.
Right.
So God had a person working to save them all in spite of what was happening to them. So they stripped him of his coat, and that's the same thing they did to Jesus at the cross, and sold him into slavery instead of killing him. Still, he did nothing but love them. This is how he fought them. He fought them with love. And he won at every point because they weren't able to kill him, but they were going to. But he fought them with love. He loved them regardless of what they did to him. That's how he fought. And love works. It works the same way today as it did then. It works the same way. And if it's used today, it will work the same way. You know, they really thought that they could stop him by getting rid of him, but the Lord had a plan for them and Joseph, and Joseph was that living sacrifice. You know, it talks about, the word talks about us being a living sacrifice. This is part of what that means, loving your enemies. It's a sacrifice. And Inez, you know, just practicing this is something that we have to do on purpose and deliberately. You know, when we go to the store and people don't treat us right, what are we gonna do? You know, I stopped to get something to eat on my way home from work today because I was trying to make sure that I had enough time to get ready for this broadcast tonight. And so I asked the lady, how long would it take to make this sandwich I was asking for? She said, oh, 15 minutes, 20 at the most. I said, oh, I got 15 minutes. So I said, okay, and I paid for it and I waited on it. And she just kept waiting on people and waiting on people. 20 minutes went by, 25 minutes went by, 30 minutes. So I said, excuse me. And before I could get that out of my mouth, oh, I'm going to go get your sandwich now. and I had bought it. It came with fries. The fries were cold. The sandwich was terrible. It wasn't up to par. You know, it wasn't nowhere near where it used to be.
They had made it, but she hadn't bothered to go back and pick it up.
Mm-hmm. So the fries got cold, everything. And so I said, okay, well, let me just go on home. And she thanked me for being a customer. And I left without saying anything. But you know that not what I used to do, Inez. Let me just tell you. I would let her know, you know, you let my food sit back there for 15 minutes and everything is cold. Sandwich,
Yeah.
the fries cold. Nobody can eat cold fries. They don't even taste the same. Oh man. So it was really a test. And so we are going to get tests like that, you know, and people are not going to be able to get rid of other people just because they want to stop them from doing something, or they're angry, or they don't like them. But God had a plan for Joseph, but Joseph had to be willing to agree with it. Joseph had to love them all. I mean, these were Abraham's seed. God loved them all, including Joseph. So we know from that point on that no one treated him well. From that point on, he was treated badly. He was sold into Egypt. Potiphar, he prospered Potiphar, who purchased him, and Potiphar became rich because of Joseph. And that should have been enough for him to honor Joseph, but when Potiphar's wife falsely accused him of improper sexual acts against her, Potiphar put Joseph in prison. And the prison master prospered because of Joseph. Yet he had to remain there until the Lord sent him to the king. Now, how did that happen? How did it happen? He interpreted the dreams of two prisoners that were sent there, and one of them was a cupbearer who was sent back. And he asked the cupbearer to remember him and tell the king that he had been put in prison for no reason. And the cupbearer forgot. He went back. He never thought of Joseph again until the king had his dream. So Joseph loved all of them. He never said a bad word about one of them. Not his brothers, not Potiphar, not Potiphar's wife, and not even the prisoner that was the cupbearer. You know, even though the prisoner did let the king know about Joseph when the king had a dream that he wanted interpreted. But he didn't. That was 2 years later. That was two whole years after he got out of prison and went back to the palace. 2 whole years he did nothing. 2 whole years he did nothing to help. Okay, so let's see what happens here. You know, when you love people, it eliminates the side effects from the kind of things that keep us in bondage. So Joseph kept loving them, and that love eliminated the side effects of these things because he didn't take them on. He just loved the people. He didn't take them on. You realize when you love people that do you wrong, you don't take on the results of that sin and sign up to it. For instance, I have really suffered a lot from rejection. But when that lady did what she did to me in that restaurant today, I didn't feel rejected. Rejection, it was far from my thought process. But a lot of times when we don't love people, the first thing we think, they did me wrong. They did me wrong. They rejected me, and so now I'm not as good as the next person. You know, if I had been this or that, they wouldn't have done it. You know, so you buy into the bondage of that sin of rejection. But when you love people, you don't even think about it. It cannot attach itself to us. So he was not depressed. Joseph was not depressed. He was not sleeping all day. He was not trying not to do good work. He did excellent in everything he did. He got up early, worked all day, and he didn't have any issues with that. He wasn't suffering from rejection because he was rejected by his brothers. He wasn't suffering from abuse because he was abused by his brothers and Potiphar. He wasn't suffering from misuse because he was misused by Potiphar. He wasn't suffering from bad blended family relationships because his brothers, even though they all had the same father, they didn't have the same mother, and so they were being partial and treating some of them better than the other. Joseph was the one they treated the worst. He wasn't suffering from being lied on like Potiphar's wife did. You know, he wasn't suffering from not being appreciated, all the things he did to help people. He wasn't suffering from not receiving honor from the folks that should have honored him because of what he added to their life. He wasn't suffering from getting help from whom he needed help. and didn't get it. He wasn't suffering from the frustration and aggravation of being a slave, which he did not sign up for. He never got weary in well doing, and he kept doing well everywhere he went. He was not suffering from not getting appreciation or a thank you for what he did to help people. Why? Why was he not suffering from all of that? Because we got all kinds of psychology, physical science, and psychological things to help people who are struggling with the bondage of all of those things we mentioned. Joseph didn't have any of those. Why? Because all of that was sin, and love covers a multitude of sin. Love covers a multitude of sin. Remember, we said in a previous study that God abided in love. You know, when we talked about love before, that God abides with you. If God is abiding with you, that stuff can't attach itself. You know, when God's presence is there, you're not even hungry. You don't want to go to the bathroom. It's just nothing can come into that. Nothing can come into that environment when you are in the presence of the Lord. And if you are abiding in love, God is present. So God was continuously abiding in Joseph. And there was no room for all of that sin that was trying to present itself. There was no room in the presence of God for that. It could not attach itself to him. So that's one of the biggest, greatest blessings. When you love like that, you don't get the residue of the sin. You know, you don't get the whatever is happening to you. You don't get the residue of that when you just love people. You know, and you know, I told you all that story that I saw that lady shared on the internet. Not this group, but Inez, I think in the group that I did tell, where this man grabbed a lady and threw her in his car, and he was raping her. And he had a knife, and she got busy telling the man that she loved him, that she appreciated him, that she wasn't going to hold this against him. And he just kept telling her, shut up, shut up, shut up. And she kept telling him that she loved him and she forgave him. And she was sorry that he had to, you know, go through whatever he had to go through. And so he finally got tired of telling her to shut up. And he wouldn't rape her. Just let her go. And what was she doing? She was loving him. And that was such an amazing story. It was a true story. I said, wow, she was giving that over one of the radio stations, and she was telling that over one of the Christian radio stations. And I just thought that was really phenomenal, that you can actually tell somebody that's trying to do you harm like that you love them. So, wow. So, what was Joseph's rewards? What was his rewards? Let's look at his rewards on this. By the king making him second to the king, he was only greater than Joseph in the matter of the throne. So what kind of honor do you think that was, Inez?
What? To make him over the king? The power, the honor the king gave him?
Yeah, the honor the king gave him.
Because the king saw that he was upright, and that and he found out that his wife had done the wrong and not him, and he found out that he was a servant of the Lord. God, the king had heard of the Lord, but he probably didn't believe him. I think he didn't believe in God, that particular king. And I think the power he gave him was because he felt that he could trust him.
Yeah.
There are people in our life that we can trust them because they don't ever seem to hold anything against anybody. And I have met a few people like that. Not a whole lot, but a few.
Yeah.
And it seems that you can count on them to do, and sometimes they get high places because that's who they are. They're not up there spreading resentment and talking about this. So that's why I think the king that saw in him as a man who had a lot of integrity, Joseph did. And God had put him in that place. You can see God's hand in all the things that happened to Joseph to put him in the position where he was in so that he could save his people. Well, I know you didn't ask that, but that's what I was thinking.
And so the king gave him that power that you're talking about. And he gave them that power even over himself.
Yeah.
You know, and that is amazing. So that was his reward. So we're looking at his rewards for loving his enemies. And then he had money. He had his own house. He had his income. He had enough to take care of himself. He was actually wealthy. He had all kinds of servants. He didn't have to do anything for himself, you know. So he had access to all of that. And so I don't know, the Bible doesn't say how much he gave him, but he gave him enough to live very, very, as a very wealthy person. And then when his family came, the king gave him Goshen, all the most fertile land in Egypt. He gave it to Joseph for his family. So he received land. He received land. And so the Egyptians, you know, they don't like cattle and things because that was one of their gods. So they didn't eat the beef. So they weren't interested. They weren't interested in that. And so the king told him to take him down into Goshen, gave him that land for them to be able to raise their family. And they grew into that. And in that particular land, it was big enough. It was big enough for it to grow into over 1 million people. Can you imagine?
Yes. Wow.
It was big enough for all of them to have their houses, all of them to have farms, all of them. They were prospering. So that's why the king at that particular time, that particular pharaoh, put them in slavery. Joseph was dead, and all of the patriarchs were dead, and they had prospered. So they were prospering. So they were afraid of them. He got favor. He always had everything he needed all the time. Can you imagine that, Inez?
Yes.
Do you think we think about that? While he was, wherever he was, he always had everything he needed. When he was with Potiphar, when he was in prison, when he was with the king, everything he needed.
Reading that, I hadn't thought of that. I wouldn't say that I thought of it on my own. I've heard it like you're teaching it. I've heard it teached and preached about him, how things just was working in his behalf. Whatever happened to him, it always was good. He didn't fight back, and he didn't complain and all the things that we do sometimes when things don't go our way, or we imagine. Sometimes we just be thinking somebody did something and it wasn't their intention, but he knew. I mean, these people intended some things for him. Some of them forgot to mention him when he helped them, but he did not hold that against anyone. So God just blessed him to be in that place where he could help his people because of who he was. Even as a kid, he had those dreams. And he dreamed those dreams. He told his father, well, his father wanted, but the brothers, oh no, you telling us, you mean we're going to bow to you? Now they had a lot of resentment and stuff, but he didn't hold that against them, what they did to him. And that was love, deep love for them, because they were his older brothers, and he just loved them,
Yeah,
because he was
yeah,
one of the younger ones. I mean, he was next to the youngest.
yeah. And that was just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And even when he went to get them and bring them into Egypt, it was a long time before they would believe that he would not take some sort of retribution, which he did not. It was a long time. Um, and so he was always given opportunity to use his gifts. He had a managing gift, and he was always able to increase whatever he put his hands to. He was able to make money and increase it, and he did that. Uh, so he was always able to use his gift. He always had opportunity to help everybody that he was any part of. And he had servants, people to help him when he needed help. He had protection. No one was ever able to physically harm him. Did you ever think about that, Inez?
No, I hadn't thought of that. I know that, I never thought of nobody, could physically harm him. I used to, when he just moved through, because I knew stories of the pharaohs and all of those people, and they were not easy people to get along with. But it seemed like Joseph's life just moved through to where he ended up, and
Mm-hmm.
they never. I mean, he was angry with what his wife said, and then he found out that wasn't true. So he had a lot to make up to that, to make up to Joseph. But it's not funny, but it shows how God works. He
Yeah,
just needed to be where he supposed to be.
right.
And they couldn't hurt him, harm him.
Yeah. No one was able to ever physically harm him, not his brothers, not Potiphar, not in prison, nowhere.
Not the people that bought him as a slave and sold him.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't a slave to them, but they sold him into Egypt on their way. So they made money by selling him. But he just seemed like he just kept right going, kept right on. And he
Right.
was young when they sold him. He was a teenager. He was not a grown man when he was sold into slavery.
Yeah.
Yes. But who was so
Well,
good, gracious.
right. And so even when he was doing what the king advised him to do, um, no one tried to challenge him. Uh,
Mm-mm.
no one tried to do anything. He was just able to move freely in all that he was doing and get help for all that he wanted to do. And then he married and have two sons who took up two positions in the tribe of Israel. Now, this is how they took up two positions. It was just this is just amazing to me. It's just wonderful to me. When they came into uh, the place where the Levites were the Levites were designated as priests, um, the tribe of Levi,
Mm-hmm.
that left 11 when they stepped up because that was the tribe that Moses was a part of. So that just left 11. But Joseph's sons took two of those positions, so now they got 12 again. So he got two of his father's blessings. while the other sons only got one.
Mhm.
So he took up two positions with his two sons. So that was amazing. This is just a few of his rewards. He got a lot of other rewards, but we can't talk about all of them in 1 hour. But let's close this out with loving your enemies. You need to bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, pray for them that despitefully use you and persecute you. It is hard for people to keep doing wrong to you when you love them. Everyone has the capacity to receive love. And when you give it to them, they receive. You can stop evil behavior and bad attitudes with love. You can even calm anger with love. Love always works. It has been tried and tested, and it has never failed. It is easy to love people that love you. They are causing you no problem at all. But your enemies are trying to bring havoc into your life, and you can stop it with love. Love your enemies and make everything they plan against you unsuccessful. And I have seen this work really well on married couples. And I have mostly talked to the wives because they would come and share about what was happening between them and their husband. And a lot of times they were ready to leave. But I would just give them information on loving him and how to do that. And they watched their husbands change. It was not, when I was giving them the instructions on how to do it and how to handle him and what to say, they they rejected that because you know he wasn't doing what he should be doing for them. Why should they do so much for him? But those that listened, they got a change in attitude, a change in behavior, and a change in the way they were being treated. And so
Mhm.
you can't tell them now that this doesn't work because they have a witness and a testimony that it does. Okay, are we done for the night, Inez? Do you have any comments on loving your enemies, and has this helped you in any way uh, be able to do that or be able to share that? This
It
is
has helped me to be able to share, it, and to do it. Because when you all the things that they said, those whole list of things that David did, that Joseph didn't have in him, the resentment, the misuse, he didn't suffer from those things because he loved the people that was some of them that persecuted, and all of them actually. So we have to come to that. I would have to come to that part in mind, not to hold those things, because those things can corrupt you, your heart and your soul, holding stuff like that. And I do have some, well, most of them my grandkids. My children, I think they are more mature now, learning to not do that. But that generation, that third generation, they hear so much nonsense till they think they're supposed to say whatever and complain and all of this. And I be telling me, you can't do that and say you love the Lord. You have to take a different stance and go a different direction. But they always got a but this and a but that, Cynthia. So yeah, I've learned and I've used this as well. Try not to do those things. I've tried not to. It's hard though, but you can do it if you trust the Lord and you love people the way the Lord said we should. And my last thing I want to say is, when I was reading this, I was thinking about the First Corinthians, the 13th chapter, where it says about charity. Charity, it suffers long, it's not puffed up. That means it puffed up means to have all this pride that you can't say I'm sorry and you can't forgive people, and you have to say whatever comes up in your mouth and you say it, and you don't care where to let the people used to say let the chips fall where they may, and they be saying stuff. Well, sometimes you can't pick up those chips. So that's where I am with that. That's what I learned. Tonight was all of my good lessons, but this was a good lesson when you use Joseph, because he went through a lot.
Yeah, well, He's the best to use because it's easier to forgive people who are not family.
Right. Isn't that true? That is.
You know, this would be real hard for some people. When you're loving people and they don't love you. Yeah.
Of family
Okay.
members and they don't love you and they hold things that
Mhm.
wasn't your intent to be a certain way, but then when they get to hold to it, they just keep it and repeat it
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
say, that kind of stuff. And they don't say it, it's not like they make a joke of it or, because some people do a joke about something you did. But some people, it's you can hear that whatever that is in them that no, that's still a deep down festering thing in them. So they have to go to the Lord and have that stuff removed from them.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
it corrupt whatever you say come out of your mouth sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you don't have any more comments, if you do,
No, I'm good.
that's it.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I want to say thank you very much. And that is it for tonight. And I will see you next week.
Okay. All right.
All right. Good night.
Good night. Well, you didn't answer my question, but I guess it was purposely.
Well, what question? I didn't hear the question.
I just said, where was everybody? That was all.
Huh?
I just asked where was everybody that used to be on.
Oh, I don't know where the folks are. I think the people are
Okay.
going through some really challenging things, Inez. And
Okay.
I've been trying to get them to understand the season that we're in and how to get through. And you know, everybody has a will that they decide how they're going to get through and how they're not.
Okay, I understand that
So
now.
some of them are in the hospital. Uh, some are
That's
sick.
good.
At
Oh,
least
okay.
two of them are, and at least one's in school and one's working on a new project on their job. So we got a lot of stuff going on. I'm
Okay.
gonna check with the ones in the hospital and see how they're doing. Um,
Okay, then send them my regards. They get better,
yeah, the lady that
because they.
asked us to pray for her sister did send us a notice that her sister was out of the hospital and was out of danger, and she did really appreciate our prayers because she believed that's what helped make a difference. So I
Amen.
guess
Prayer.
things must have been looking really bad. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah. So
Okay.
she sent us a notice saying that her sister was out of the hospital and she was doing a lot better.
Okay.
Okay. So when they get better, we'll see them coming back.
Okay. And
All
I'll
right.
tell Linda I talked to you today, and I always tell her you have Bible study. So I'm trying to
Yeah.
get her to tune in on Mondays. Maybe she will one day.
Okay.
Okay
All
then.
right. Well, we'll see you next Monday.
Okay then.